wife of the Prophet. You are not like any other woman. Why? Because you have a different status. You are wife of Rasulullah. Therefore, you're not an ordinary individual. That's why many of the ayat afterwards also reflect and touch upon the fact that your hisab, kitab, and accountability is twice as much as other individuals. Meaning what? If there is an act of indecency that comes from you, the next ayah says, بِفَاحِشَةٍ مُبَيِّنَةٍ, if any sort of indecency comes from you, فَيُضَاعَفْ لَهَا الْعَذَابِ. The adab is twice as much, where it would be for an ordinary individual, simple, as one of what they have done. So this is where this distinction is being given. Don't think that this distinction is being given because their status has changed for them now. No, this is also has to do with the character of Rasulullah. Imagine someone from the household of a Maulana is seen doing something right away. People question, why are you doing this? Why are you, for example, I don't know, can't think of anything. Why are you watching movies, something of that sort? So this is something which I grew up with, and I got a great deal when I would be with my friends. A lot of those who have grown up over here with me, if we go out, for example, movies, they're like, so, they expect, more from you. When they expect more from merely a Maulana, just imagine what the expectation would be from Prophet of Islam. Therefore, this status is given to you solely because of the wujud of Rasulullah. If there's any value being given to you, don't forget, the value is associated with the status of Rasulullah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon him. So it says, لَسْتُنَّا كَأَحَدٍ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ. Okay, you're not like ordinary women, because you're not wife of Rasulullah. And then the kalam that comes, this is not exclusive for them. This is for all the women of the world. And in fact, it includes men as well. The address is to women because the tone and the sigha and the pronouns are used feminine, but it could be applicable to others as well. In ittaqaytunna fala takhda'na bil qawl. Do not be complacent in your speech. If you be wary of Allah, meaning in ittaqaytunna, if you practice taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do not be complacent in your speech. Meaning what? Meaning don't use a sound or a voice which would go ahead and increase the listeners, give tahreek to a listener in a sort of desire, and lust will increase in a person who's listening to your speech. That is possible. Just by hearing your words, if you speak in a certain tone, it could possibly go ahead and lead someone to have these sort of illicit ideas. So he says, فَلَا تَخْضَعْنَا بِالْقَوْلِ. Don't be complacent in your speech. Why? فَيَطْمَعَ الَّذِي فِي قَلْبِهِ مَرَضٌ. The person who's sick at heart, those who are already ill when it comes to their heart, what will happen to them? They will start having this tama. Those who are sick-hearted, they will start aspiring, listening to your speech, and they will go in that direction. وَقُلْنَا قَوْلًا مَعْرُوفًا. And now, whenever you speak, make sure that you speak with a kalam, which is a good kalam, ma'ruf, which is known, which is good. Good speech, that is what is being referred to. Now, this is as far as all of mankind are concerned. Some of the things that are being taught here in this ayat from the akhlaqi perspective, which are the lessons that we can derive quickly, and so that I can get to some of the sirat and the stories regarding here, and the rest of the speech will not have any sort of take-home messages. Just right here in this ayat that you will find the message, which says, because I'll be focusing more on the historical aspect of our life, that make sure that your speech is not complacent. Even over here, when you come across, when you're speaking to someone, a lot of time when we gather over here in these gatherings, we come across with our opposite genders, our sisters are here. When you come across them, when you're speaking to them, make sure that you not use a tone which could lead to someone having these sort of ideas in their hearts. The very next ayah, which talks about Ahlul Bayt, does not begin with Innama yuridullah. Rather, it begins with what? after having mentioned that all wives of the Prophet, you're not like any other women. Make sure that you're not complacent in your speech. Make sure that your speech is qawlan ma'rufa. وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ. As if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to give us a prophecy that some of them are going to go against this. Let me make sure that I have put this word in there already. Because there will be some who will go ahead and abolish, who will go ahead and against this kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One concept should be clear, that whenever you have sigha amr, fi'l amr, that which talks about something you must do, that tells us that it is wajib. It's not a recommended act anymore. It is not something which is mubah. Remain in your houses. This is an exclusive hukum to the wives of Rasulullah, because that's not the hukum for our wives. That's not the hukum for our women. They should remain, but they can leave with the permission. There's nothing wrong with it. Here is exclusive hukum to the wives of Rasulullah. وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ. Remain inside your houses. Don't leave your houses, even after the wafat of Allah. Unless, of course, this is something which is necessary for you to go out. That's exception. وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ وَلَا تَبَرُّجْنَ وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَ تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ. This is important. You all come from a background which is Jahili background. You come from the background of ignorant era. You lived in Jahili time. Do not turn back to your terms the way you used to live in the time of Jahiliyyah. Because it's not appropriate for a woman who has made all these strides to come forward and get to this level, now all of a sudden turn back and lose all this momentum that they have gained. It says, وَأَقِمْنَا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتِينَا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَطِعْنَا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ. Establish the prayer, give the zakat, and be obedient to Allah and be obedient to Rasulullah. After man mentioned all of these things, now Allah says, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. So now you understand why Allah placed this ayat tatheer after all of this kalam. Because exclusively the discussion is only about the wives of Rasulullah. This is one of the methods of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he said, Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun, that we have sent this Quran and we are the protectors of this Quran. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means, that this ayat tatheer is prone to what? Prone to be removed from Quran or fabricated. Therefore, we have kept it in such a way that nobody will dare touch this ayah. But unfortunate part is that in the history, in the books of history, they've been trying to paint and do the ta'weel of certain personalities by, and I don't have a better term than doing the makeup on the personalities of these individuals for 14th century. Just somehow remove the negativity that is associated with such individuals. And those who have been given this status somehow bring their status down. And you know, if you think about it, not me, this is the kalam of our ulama. They've come to a conclusion. They say that the individuals who are subject to such attacks, they have something to do with Ali ibn Abi Talib. If they are, जिसका अली से कोई ताल्लुक है, वो निशाना बनेगा. If you have any ta'alluq with Ali ibn Abi Talib, then you are subject to this tyranny and you're subject to this injustice. And the history has not done it. We look at, everybody knows, Janab Khadija is not only Rafiqa Hayat of Rasulullah, meaning the life partner of Rasulullah, but she's also Rafiqa Maqsadeh Rasulullah. Right? The maqsad of Rasulullah is to spread this Islam, to spread the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He sent as the last of the messenger. Janab Khadija is not just Rafiqa Hayat, she's Rafiqa Maqsadeh Rasulullah, which is to spread the deen and the religion. That's why when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not speak to Rasulullah for some time, Rasulullah was not worried. people started worrying that maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had stopped sending the, as far as Wahi has stopped. Use the other one. Let's get the other one. Some other one. It should be that one. One more line, so what please? So when Wahi stopped for some time, they thought that, for example, Allah forsaking us. The very first surah that was revealed, Surah Al-Duha, وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَدَ مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَىٰ. And then up until the point where it gets to أَلَمْ يَجِدْكَ يَتِيمًا فَآوَىٰ وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًّا فَهَدَىٰ وَوَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَىٰ. These three ayat in particular, that after a break and a pause in the revelation of the ayat of Quran, people thought that Allah has forsaken Rasulullah. No, that was not the case. Allah sends the very first ayat in which He mentions the two of the most important personalities associated to Rasulullah. Alam yajidka yatiman fa'awa, did we not find you an orphan and we provided shelter for you? You just heard in the Marsiyah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is taking the authority and taking credit for something which Abu Talib did. Allah provided, Abu Talib did. Yatiman fa'awa, who provided support to Rasulullah when he was yatim? Hazrat Abu Talib provided support when Rasulullah was yatim. In other words, Allah is calling the act of Hazrat Abu Talib to be his own act. And then He said, وَوَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَىٰ. We found you to be what? In need, and we provide for you. How do we provide for you? We provided, and the Mufassirin have all agreed upon when they write this tafsir of وَوَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَىٰ, that this ayat refers to the wujud of Janab Khadija al-Kubra, salamullahi alayha. So therefore it is important, it is imperative. And my plea is not just to you in a sense, but also to those who have done and their possibility of them doing something is already. That there's a need for us to produce material about certain women of Islam. I think there hasn't been enough material available. When I was looking at my own library that belongs to my dad, my father, I had about 15, 20 books on Janab Khadija. We have about, 100 some books on Janab Sayyid. But when I looked at the material in other languages, such as English, I think there was only one, and that's it. So therefore, it is imperative upon us to invest somehow in order to get, because the work is already done. It's not like, in other languages, the work has not been done. We have about 15, 20 books in Arabic and Persian, and even in Urdu that are written about Bibi Khadija. But you only find one or two, that two are not at the highest of these standards. So there's a need for us to produce these materials which has already been written about these personalities of Islam, such as Khadija, such as Salma, such as Baneen, such as Fatima bint Asad, such as Bibi Amina even. How much do we know about her? Such as Halima Sadiya, for example, Asma bint Umays, for example, Fazza, Zainab, Kulthum, Rabab, Layla, Sakina, all of these women, Masuma Qum, Salamullahi alayha, and Narjis Khatun, Hakima Khatun. How much do we know about these individuals? Only maybe when the majlis is taking place, a few words, when they were born, when did they live, what did they do, maybe one or two fadail that are mentioned from the Kalam of Masumin, because there's not enough time to go ahead and go through the list of all of their fadail, because they're not usually being spoken of. So this is where I think the trend has to increase, where we need to produce some material. You could be the help in providing for it. It means, in a sense, financially, and then there could be scholars who can go ahead and do the work of translating the work that has already been done. There are books after books after books that have been written, penned by the ulama in Arabic and Persian but unfortunately, this material does not exist in English language. And I blame persons like myself who have not done enough to produce material which is worthy of the listeners of our society. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So when we do the tazkirah of Janab Khadija, you know why her personality, of course, in our Shia madhab, her personality is as high as it gets. Because Rasulullah is the one who has said that there are 4 ladies of paradise. Among them is Asiya. Among them is the sister of Hazrat Musa. Amongst them is Maryam. Amongst them is Khadija bint Khuwaylid. So Rasulullah has already mentioned the high status of Janab Khadija. He did not mention anyone else. He mentioned these 4 ladies to be the women of paradise. Because they are last one, so on, that is above all the other ones. Rasulullah did not mention anyone. So as far as our madhab is concerned, Janab Khadija has high status. You don't find the same thing in the other madhab. You say, well, what do we care about the other madhab? We don't. But there's a lack of understanding. That is the reason they have, subdued the status of these individuals. But I think some of our ulama have come up with the theory. The reason Janab Khadija is not given that limelight is because she is the grandmother of the sons and the daughters of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Remember I said, if you have attachment with Ali, history will make you the subject of criticism. Because she's the grandmother of the children of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Remember what happened in Badr? Remember what happened in Karbala? They said this is the Badla. This is the redemption from what happened in the Battle of Badr. You killed our forefathers, we're killing you because of that. Ali killed our forefathers, now we're killing the children of Ali. So when you are associated, Janab Khadija is also subject to that criticism. That because she is the grandmother of the children of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And also, even if she was not related to Ali ibn Abi Talib like that, or in a grandmother, if she was only the wife of Rasulullah, she would still not have gotten that limelight because her father or her brother were not amongst those people. Their aqidah is attached with those individuals today. Today, when you find that there are, Islam provides shadow to many weak individuals today. Islam serves as that umbrella that anyone who comes into the realm of Islam, the way Islam protects them. It's not just the physical protection, but the spiritual protection that a person feels. That's why you see the fastest growing religion, regardless of how many hurdles that come in the way, it still continues to grow. It's not because of us Muslimin that we're doing a great job in spreading this religion. No, it has to do with the teachings of this religion and the sacrifices that have been given for this religion. Now it is, it's like this tree which is providing shadow to anyone who comes underneath it, right? But this was not always this tanawar darah. In the beginning, it was just a small plant. And you know who irrigated this plant in the beginning? It was the wealth of Bibi Khadija. It was the wealth of Bibi Khadija that irrigated this plant, that it became this tree, and then it was the blood of Sayyid al-Shuhada that further cemented this tree, so that up until the day of judgment, nobody can shake the branches of this tree. That is the sacrifice through which people are still continues to coming into the realm of Islam. Don't take credit for people like you and I that we are doing something as far as this religion is concerned. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, zawjiyat is a very delicate relationship. I'm no expert, but I'm sure that when we look at the books of history, we find that even the wives of the Prophet or even the household of Rasulullah was not protected from some of these siyasiyat that exist in these wives of Rasulullah. You say, well, If someone comes to the household of Rasulullah, shouldn't they already become very muqaddas and they should develop this taqaddus? Yeah, that should be the case. It would be considered like that. And again, I'll go back to my own example. You're raised in the household of Maulana, you should know at least the basics. Right? You should know how to pray, you should know how to do these things, you should know, or in fact, there's more expected of you. Now that you're a wife of Rasulullah, more is expected of you. No, don't be fooled by that. Why? Because the wives of Nuh and Lut والسلام, are mentioned in Quran like this. Udkhula finnare ma'ad-dakhilin. You too, oh the wives of Nuh and Lut, enter an-nar, the Jahannam, ma'ad-dakhilin, those who are entering the Jahannam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering the wives of Hazrat Nuh. You say, well, you know, the household of Rasulullah is not protected. What about our household? In fact, that is the case. We should be very, very careful, especially when we have chosen to live in such a society, in a place where there's always attacks from shaitan from all around us. You think, well, we've kept shaitani things out of our houses. How so? This computer, this, you know, electronics, these gadgets are the invitation of shaitan to come inside our house. Right? You can't disconnect yourself from them. I'm not saying that you can turn them all off and you live in that sort of, no. Islam does not invite you to live the life of seclusion, that you still continue to protect yourself. That is what is expected. And your deen has given enough to you for you to have that sort of protection. So the houses of Rasul were not protected. What do you think our houses will be protected? Allah says to the wife of Hazrat Nuh and Hazrat Lut, Udkhala finnare ma'ad-dakhilin, enter you two, both of you, into Jahannam. And this is, you know, which surah is this? This is Surah Tahrim. Surah Tahrim, these ayat talk about the two wives of Hazrat Nuh and Hazrat Lut, asking them to enter Jahannam. The beginning ayat of the same surah, Surah Tahrim, talk about two other wives of our Prophet, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In Tatuba, I'm only reading the ayat. I only want you to read the ayat and the translation, and you can go ahead and be the judge of it. In Tatuba ilallahi faqad sagat qulubukuma. I challenge you to go ahead and pick up Tafsir Fakhr Razi, one of the biggest mufassir of Ahl Sunnah. Go pick up Tafsir Durr Mansur Suyuti. Go ahead and pick up Tafsir Baydawi. All of these are Ummuhat al-Tafasir of Ahl Sunnah. If you find anyone who mentions that who two are being referred to other than the two wives who were the daughters of the first and the second Khalifa, you won't find anyone else's name in there. What does the ayah says? We're not here to judge, but we're just reading the ayat of Quran. In Tatuba. And of course, we're not Arabs, so I'll translate this for you. In Tatuba. Some of them are Arabs over here, they'll understand. In Tatuba, faqad sagat qulubukuma. If the word in is in a shartiyah. In comes, and those who said the word, they'll agree with me. In comes when you are putting a conditional sentence. I'll give you an example. If you come to my house, I'll come to your house. Meaning what? My coming to your house is dependent on what? You coming to my house. So this is called Jumla Shartiyya. Meaning I'm placing the shart and jawab-e-shart in the sentence. If you do this, I'll do that. Meaning if you give 10,000, I'll give 10,000. Right? If you give first, then I'll give. This is called Jumla Shartiyya. So if there's jawab-e-shart, that tells you if that jawab-e-shart was fulfilled, then yes, the sentence would be complete. But if jawab-e-shart is not there, meaning what? This remained incomplete. I don't want this to become too complicated. Just reciting the translation. In tatuba faqad sagat qulubukuma. If you two go ahead and do tawbah, indeed your hearts have swerved. Sagat qulubukuma, tumhare dil tedhe ho gaye hain. Now there's no jawab-e-shart that you went ahead and did tawbah and your hearts became straight again. Ayat does not mention that. Ayat left it open after this. in tatuba faqassamat qulubukuma. Now, how do you go ahead and justify if the hearts did not come back to the way they used to be? These are merely ayat of Quran. You're not here to judge anyone. Just listen to these ayat, the initial verses of Surah Tahrim, and inshallah chapter 66, you will find further details. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. But the imtiyaz of Hazrat Khadija is that she lived and spent the time 25 years with Rasulullah while no one was along. You know the similarity between Janab Khadija and Janab Sayyidah? Of course, Janab Sayyidah. Between the two. As long as Janab Sayyidah was alive, Ali did not marry anyone else. As long as Bibi Khadija was alive, Rasulullah did not marry anyone else. And therefore, a person who would have the desire to get married, it is when they are young. Rasulullah is 25 years old. That's when the desire of an individual would be to get married, to further their progeny and whatnot. Person who's already in their 60s, do you think they will have any desire? They might still, but there really isn't same as it was when we were 25 or something like that. So Rasulullah remained married to Janab Khadija for 25 years. This is the time in which Rasulullah went to Mi'raj. Janab Sayyid Khadija was witness of Rasulullah going to Mi'raj. This is the time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to Rasulullah. So Janab Khadija was witness to the wahi coming down on Rasulullah, and the first one to go ahead and acknowledge the nabuwwat of Rasulullah. It would be easy to say, if I can just say this in maybe Urdu, कि अगर उनकी अजमत को देखना है तो ये कहना काफी ना हुआ कि रसूल की बीवी होना, बल्कि रसूल की बीवी होना और है, जनाब खदीजा होना और है. सलात दीजिए मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद. That's why when Rasulullah received the first revelation, and even after the wafat of Janab Khadija, when he would remember her, people would question, how Rasulullah would get offended, and he would respond with such words. He would say like this, Amanat bi hina kafaran nas. Everybody believes once the thing has started. Everybody jumps the bandwagon when everything is rolling. But initially, who takes this challenge? He says, Amanat bi hina kafaran nas. She's the one who believed in me, brought iman onto me when people were disbelieving me. Wa sadaqatni id kadabanni as nas. She considered me to be truthful when people were ascribing lies to me. She provided me with her wealth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me children through Khadija. And they did not give me any children through any other wives. Janab Khadija, her tragedy along with Rasulullah is that all that she had done when Islam was picking up and the propagation was now becoming a norm, the Quraysh started to feel fear. This is the 7th year of Bi'asat of Rasulullah. Bi'asat of Rasulullah, I mentioned that when Rasulullah started receiving the revelation, 7th year into the Bi'asat. Then when Kuffar started seeing that, Rasulullah is spreading the message and it is flourishing, we need to do something. They got together, person by the name Ikrama went ahead and documented this treaty saying that we're going to go ahead and put a boycott on Banu Hashim and Banu Abdul Muttalib. We will boycott them, we will not marry them, we will not trade with them, anyone who wants to have any connection with them. Just like these days, some of the big powers do the same thing. They put on embargoes on certain countries. They said, don't trade with these countries. If you do, you will be also, subject to this and that and sanctions. So this was being done at that time. And so what happened? Rasulullah's life was in danger. At this point, the second most in Islam, Hazrat Abu Talib steps in. This was a place called Shaykh Abi Talib. They go ahead and to this place because the Quraysh had done the Muhasara. They wanted to protect the life of Rasulullah. They went into the Shayb, this valley of Abu Talib, and they stayed there for 3 years. You know how difficult it was? Who provided for the food in these 3 years? It was the wealth of Janab Khadija that provided. Who physically brought the food over there? Because there was this embargo, nobody was allowed to come in. It was the nephew of Hazrat Khadija, Hakim ibn Hizam ibn Khuwailid, who was the nephew of Hazrat Khadija. He would go ahead and bring the food at night time so that nobody could see, on the request of Hazrat Khadija. One day Abu Lahab saw this. He stopped Hakim. He said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm bringing this food. See if you can stop me." Abu Lahab tried to stop. There was another man. Nothing more than that. Let him do what he wants to do. He was then able to take this food and he was able to bring the food inside. This is how for 3 years they spent this time. But all that was provided for 3 years was all from the barakat of Hazrat Khadija salamullahi alayha. And then when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the revelation of Rasulullah onto Rasulullah, "Oh Rasul, go ahead and tell them that ahadnama, that pact that you have written and hung into the Kaaba, nothing of that pact has remained. Nothing of that pact has remained except Bismika Allahumma. Everything has been eaten by an ant." They say, "Well, Muhammad is lying again." No. Hazrat Abu Talib goes, says, "Go ahead and bring out this ahadnama that you had written that you will deprive Banu Hashim." They bring out the ahadnama and they see that yes, indeed, an ant had eaten up the entire pact. Only thing that remained was the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Bismika Allahumma, and that's when this embargo comes to an end. But it was little too late when this embargo comes to an end. Why? 35 days or a few days after this embargo ends, wafat of Hazrat Abu Talib takes place on the 26th day of Rajab, and it is mentioned 35 days after the wafat of Hazrat Abu Talib, the wafat of Bibi Khadija sallallahu alayha takes place. This was definitely triggered and caused by the su'ubat that they had faced in this Shayb Abi Talib. We look at the last few moments of the lives of Hazrat Khadija. आखिरी लहज़ात क्या है जनाब खदीजा के? वो कहती हैं रसूलुल्लाह से कि अगर मैंने आपके हक में कोई कोताही की हो तो मुझे माफ कर। ऐ खदीजा, तुमने सारी जिंदगी अपने माल से रसूलुल्लाह को प्रोवाइड किया, अपनी जिंदगी तुमने दे दी. It is difficult for a person who comes from a poor, it is easy for a person who comes from a modest background to overlook all of these luxuries. But she came from a background, she was Malikatul Arab, and then to come and let go of everything, this is something which indeed requires such courage. आजकल अगर हमारी ना कुछ मुसीबतें हो जाएं, हमारे ऊपर कुछ परेशानियां आ जाएं, तो जनाब खदीजा से सीखें कि किस बैकग्राउंड से आई थी, कहां से आई थी, किस मकाम पर उन्होंने इख्तियार की है. जनाब खदीजा ने सारे काम अंजाम दिए. कहती थी कि मुझे माफ कर दीजिएगा, अगर मेरे दिल में से किसी चीज की ख्वाहिश है तो आपकी रजामंदी है और मुझे कुछ नहीं चाहिए. इस वक्त जब रसूलुल्लाह दाखिल हुए थे ना फतेह मक्का के बाद से, when Rasulullah entered into Makkah after the conquest of Makkah, many people said, "Oh Rasulullah, come and stay with us. Oh Rasulullah, come and stay with us. We want to be the host of you, oh Rasulullah." Rasulullah declined the da'wat of all of these individuals. Instead, Rasulullah went to the grave of Hazrat Khadija. He erected a tent over there and he spent a few days just with the Hazrat Khadija sallallahu alayha. Sixth Imam says, "Lamma tuwaffiyat Khadija." जब खदीजा की वफात वाक़ई होती है, जअलत फातिमा तदूदु bi Rasulillah. Janab Sayyida was walking around taduru hawlahu. She was walking around Rasulullah wa taqulu और कह रही थी, या अबती ऐना अम्मी, ए बाबा मेरी मादर गिरामी कहाँ है? रसूलुल्लाह जवाब देने से कासिर थे. अपनी बेटी को कैसे समझाएं कि तुम्हारी माँ इस दुनिया में नहीं रही है? किस मुंह से बताएं वो बच्ची जो अभी 5-6 साल की है कि तुम्हारी माँ इस दुनिया से गुजर चुकी है? रसूलुल्लाह में हिम्मत न थी बताने की. इतने में जिब्राइल नाज़िल होते हैं. फनज़ल जिब्राइल फक़ाल लहू रब्बुका यअमुरुका, अल्लाह आपको अम्र करता है, अन तक़रा फातिमा सलाम, फातिमा को सलाम पहुंचाइए. फतक़ूलु लहा, और उनसे कह दीजिए, इन्ना उम्मकी फी बैतिन, तुम्हारी मादर गिरामी एक ऐसे घर में है, कआबिही मिन दहबिन, جو याकूत और सोने से बना हुआ है, वो आसिया के साथ है, मरियम बिन्ते इमरान के साथ है। और इस तरीके से रसूलुल्लाह ने बयान किया कि खदीजा कहाँ मौजूद है। जिब्राइल को आके मदद करनी पड़ी, जब जाके रसूलुल्लाह में हिम्मत हुई जनाब सैयदा को ये पैगाम देने की। जनाब सैयदा ने ये सुना, उनको तसल्ली हो गई कि मेरी माँ अच्छी जगह पे है, मेरी माँ इस दुनिया से जा चुकी है, मगर याकूत और सोने के महल में है, आसिया बिन्त इमरान और जनाबे मरियम के हमरा है। अब उनको परेशानी की कोई आलम नहीं है, लेकिन मैं कहूँगा जनाब सैयदा और जनाब खदीजा, आपको तदफीन किया गया, मदफून हुई जन्नतुल मुअल्ला में। क्या हमारा ये तकाजा नहीं है मुसलमान होने के नाते कि उस कब्र की तामीर की जाए? अरे मासूमीन जो बकी में मदफून है, उस बकी की तामीर की जाए। अरे ये वो हस्तियां हैं जिनकी वजह से इस्लाम बाकी है। क्या इतना हक नहीं है कि इनकी कबूर के ऊपर तामीर किया जाए? जनाब खदीजा, आपने अपनी बेटी से कहा कि बाबा से सिफारिश करना, अरे मुझे अपना लिबास कफन के तौर पे दे दे, ताकि मेरी मोहब्बत का अंदाजा हो। सिर्फ इस दुनिया तक मोहब्बत रही, मैं चाहती हूँ कब्र में भी रसूल के साथ ही रहूं। मैं कहूंगा आपका जनाजा बुलंद हुआ, आपको रसूल ने सुपुर्द खाक किया, आपकी तस्वीर हुई, अरे आपको कफन भी मिला। लेकिन हाय सैयदा, किस आलम गुर्बत में इस दुनिया से जाती है, रात की शब तारीख में आपका जनाजा उठता है, गिनती के लोग जनाब सैयदा के जनाजे में। अरे आज तक की मजलूमियत किसी को नहीं मालूम, सैयदा कहाँ